Hi, I had some questions about what to do with the Google Doc um, that is part of your preparation for writing Essay 2. So I wanted to look at it a little bit and explain how I'd like you to use it. The idea of the Google Doc is that it is going to help to identify some of the qualities that create visionaries, and then collect up some evidence from the about the particular women that you read about, so that everybody doesn't have to read the whole book in order to do essay two. So if you look at the instructions here, use one page for each answer to the key question. So I like this organized with divided up into pages, and each page will have at the top of it the name of a quality or some common feature between among these four women. So the question that's central to essay two is what creates a visionary. This could be some bit of their personal history, character traits. That's probably what most of these are going to end up being. Coincidences of historical situation, or any other sort of similarities that you can identify. Um, Rather than organize the pages, the parts of this Google Doc by woman, I want to organize them by trait because that's going to be the organizing principle of your essay. So we started in my face-to-face class. We brainstormed for a few minutes some possibilities. You're not limited to these, but this is just a starting point, and this is the some of the qualities that my face-to-face class started collecting up some evidence for. But I encourage you to think of some other ones beyond this or in addition to this. Um, so we've got pages set up. So what the first person to do curiosity to write something down, they put this header here, and you can see they're following this. So we have a series of these qualities, and I had said to make them each pages. So what we can do is just go in here and insert a page break. Now you'll just see it as a line here, but if you printed them out, they'd be then on different pages. So I'm just going to move this up to the top here. And if you're not familiar, most of you probably have used Google Docs, but I just any of you who haven't, Google Docs does saves automatically, so you don't have to worry about that. And so we can put a page break here. I'm not going to go through and do it all. Okay, and so within each page, you're going to have sections for the women, and what you're trying to do with these is to collect up evidence that supports the idea that Jane Jacobs, for example, was a curious woman. My 9:30 class was working in groups, so they just are identifying themselves by class because I know who's in each group. For my did I say face to face? For my face to face class has the 9:30 class. For the online students, I'd ask people to put their names to identify, just so I can give you credit. It's not a big grade, but just to give you participation credit. And so what most of what people are starting with here are um, quotations. Quotations are fine. If you when you put a quotation, you want to put the page number next to it in parentheses for the benefit, partly because that's how you would be citing sources, but also so that people who are um, interested in writing about curiosity will be able to go to the book and see some of the context for this quotation and get some examples. You're not required to use quotations here. What you could do is paraphrase, put in your own words something that the woman did that supports the idea that she was curious. And in fact, I think sometimes the quotations that where they just Barnett comes out and says she's curious, or somebody else says that the woman is curious, is perhaps not as convincing as something that the woman did that shows her curiosity. So I'd encourage you to not restrict yourself to quotations, but also put down some information. And you don't have to go in any great detail because you'll be giving the page number. So whether you give a quote, or if you're paraphrasing some information from the book, please include the page numbers. If you're using a direct quote, also put quotation marks around it. And what I'd like you to do is kind of organize these by woman. So put all the Jane Goodall um, information together. So I'm just going to put this here and just kind of organize this. And we've got Alice Waters is here. So I'm going to put this up here. Okay, and what we could do is, I don't know, maybe just have a Jane Jacobs section here. Let's see. And then Jane Goodall, and then we've got Alice Waters, and we can maybe see how this looks if we put some bullet points, maybe something like that. Looks good. So if you want to go through and do a little editing as you're adding your own woman, if the information about the women aren't grouped together, if you could group them together, that would be good. We've got Jane Jacobs, Jane Goodall, Alice Waters, and we could I'm not going to take the time right now to do that. Jane Jacobs is up here, so we'll move this up here at least, so we got the information together. Okay, so this is all Jane Goodall. So I would no, it isn't Jane. The two Janes. I would encourage you to look through this, and if your woman isn't included in a particular trait, and you think there is some evidence of her demonstrating that trait, I'd encourage you to add that in. Try to add new information. Don't repeat a quote that somebody else has used. So we got independence, drive, or ambition. It's a little tricky sometimes coming up with the words for this. So if you are using a different word, but it seems to get at this kind of idea, you could add your word up here to the top if you thought it was a synonym. Rebellious, revolutionary, sensitive to surroundings. I think that fits. There's a lot of talk about that for various senses for the different women, I think. Sweet talker, imaginative, socially responsible, intelligent, ecologically responsible. I think those are interesting distinctions. Open-minded, fearless, persistent. Okay, so people are getting a good social, antisocial, and social. I think that's interesting to have both of those. Loyalty. Okay, so it seems like some of the online students are jumping in, which is good. Okay, so that I hope that helps to clarify what you're using the Google Doc for. Now let me just look for just a second, get the assignment up here and draw your attention to a few things. So notice, I hope it wasn't too confusing. I got a few emails saying that it was a little confusing, that we've got these two sections. This is the summary that was already due. I don't really consider it a full-blown essay because you're not really advancing your own point of view in the essay, but just in the summary, but just trying to capture and condense what Barnett said about the your particular woman in her chapter. So this is collecting up information that you're using in this essay 2 definition, which is more your own thoughts. So you're promoting your thesis about what are the crucial traits of a visionary. And as I say here, you move beyond merely summarizing what someone else has said to draw your own conclusions. Um, Again, this is the key question you want to make sure your essay answers. What creates a visionary? And then I have some suggestions here about process. So the Google Doc is part of this learning about the other women. You also may want to look at the essays that other people have written, not the essays, the summaries that other people in the different classes have written. Um, and I will try to go through these. It's Wednesday today. I will try to go through these today or tomorrow and point out the summaries that I think are some of the better ones that you might want to look at to try to make that a little bit easier. Um, uh, you can use those essays and the Google Docs to refer you to particular places in the book with the page numbers that people have given for the quotations in their summaries. Also, the reason for in the summary where I asked you to draw quotes from the book, those quotes that are should be at the as part of your summary assignment um, are potential material. In the wording in the summary assignment was tied to this assignment, so that some of those quotes, if you look through what people have plucked from the book, um, if they followed the assignment, there might be some usable quotes there. In particular, some page numbers where you can go and get some more context. Again, what you well, okay. So let me work through this. Um, there are some limitation or some requirements here in terms of the number of women you need to discuss. There are two pieces of it. One is for the essay as a whole. You need to talk about at least three of the four women. So once you decide on the qualities you want to write about, you want to look at which three, or you can write about all four, best illustrate those qualities. And then further down, there is another um, requirement that for each of the qualities that you're talking about or the similarities, you need to discuss at least two of the four women. So the three women over the whole essay at least, and at least two women in each section. So once you sort of get the lay of the land and see what qualities you have and what you think are the strongest qualities, um, I would aim at I suggest between 3 and 5 different, where do I say that? Somewhere. Between 3 and 5 qualities might be good, unless you have two that you really can go into some detail about. And then you want to think in terms of developing a thesis. Initially, your thesis really can just be, doesn't have to be a fully crafted sentence. It just can be the identification of those several qualities or similarities that you're going to focus on. That's going to be the organizing principle of your essay. In the past, I've had students who organized their essay by woman. So they had a section about Alice Waters and then a section about Jane Jacobs, whatever. You don't want to do that. You have a thesis that identifies these qualities. That should be the organizing principle of your essay, by by quality rather than by woman. So you'll have sections of the essay. Well, uh, let me. I'll get into that in a minute. So you have your thesis statement here that answers the question. Then you need to collect up some evidence from the Google Doc, from your own reading of your particular woman, from looking at other people's summaries, from consulting the book. Um, then you're going to draft. This is going to be a fully developed essay, so you'll need an introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion. I suggest writing the body paragraphs first. Introductions and conclusions are tricky, so why start with something hard? Start with something easy. Um, Probably you'll have one paragraph per aspect. If those paragraphs start to feel too bulky to you and your sense of paragraph rhythm is uh, violated by having these bulky paragraphs, you may want to break um, of the paragraph about curiosity, say, we'll take into several paragraphs. But it's fine to have a sort of curiosity paragraph that's fairly sizable. You'll need a topic sentence. That's why I had you read some of the information about thesis statements and topic sentences. You need a topic sentence that announces in some way that aspect, and then you need to you discuss at least two of the four women with some evidence from their lives that demonstrates how that particular trait played out. Um, you can use quotations, but be a little bit sparing of quotations so that you don't just have a mostly quotations laced together with a few words from you. If you can put something into your own words, that's usually the way to go. Um, so you can, and again, I would look for evidence that really demonstrates these qualities. So more than just that Barnett says she was curious or persistent or whatever. How do you see that when you read about what she actually did in her life or said or wrote? Um, all obviously, pretty much all of this information is going to come from the book. You don't need to put a citation after every little bit of information. It's clear that the information is all from the book. I would say just to put an in-text citation um, with a quotation mark. I'll give you a little bit more information about citation after the rough drafts are done when we're going from rough draft to final draft. So some of the citation stuff you can clean up as you're polishing your final draft. Once you get the body paragraphs written, then you might want to think about either the introduction or the conclusion. Your introduction, somehow you need to get the idea of visionary, that the essay is looking at qualities of a visionary, and that you're using this book and these women as case studies in order to draw some more general conclusions. Um, uh, Try to write something that has some sharp details, some well chosen words, some nicely balanced sentences, whatever, something stylistic that demonstrates to your reader what a splendid writer you are. You also want to try to engage the reader in addition to introducing your topic. Typically, the thesis statement comes at the end of that introduction, um, which, as I say, both concludes the paragraph and serves as a transition to the body and an indication of what the organization of the body of your body paragraphs will be. Typically, the order of the um, pieces in your thesis. So in this case, the pieces will be the different traits. The order that you use in your thesis statement will be the order that you use for the body paragraphs so that those match. But of course, it's easy to move things around when you're using word processor. There may be some reason for putting um, one trait earlier. You might want to talk about how these women got engaged in their particular uh, movement or issue that they were working on, and then something about how they persisted through difficulties, and then how they communicated. So there may be some sort of logical order for the reasons, or you may want to start with the most important or end with the most important. You can play around with that as you're working on your rough draft. Your conclusion. You might want to briefly sum up what you've said, but you want to do more than just that. This is a relatively short essay. 1,000 words is typically my idea for an essay length. So you don't just want to repeat what you've already said. You want to try to extend or deepen or reflect on what you've said. You may want to look at the question of gender and the importance of these women being women, which seems to be a central part of Barnett's message throughout the book. You might want to talk about why visionaries are important in society, um, what we can do to create visionaries, how can schools, when you think about these qualities of visionaries, think about your own education and whether these qualities were really nurtured during the educational process. So something that you think of that sort of um, advances the what you're saying, and gives us something to think about as we end the essay. So there's some information about revision and criteria for grading. Okay, so I hope that's clear. If you have any questions about the assignment, please shoot me an email, or you can post them here on the blog.